Right. I got photos today printed, and so the top ones are 4x6 that are cropped in a little bit. Some showing some rocks, some were trimmed back, others where you don't see it at all. And then below is the same thing, just in 5x7s. And it looks like this 4x6 here is the winner because the paper kind of mock-up aligns just right on top. So I have a little bit of tape on the back of it just to hold it in place. And so I will trim around it, and then that will be the photo that I will adhere to the backdrop before I get ready to pour the water. So to adhere the picture to the backdrop, I'm just using some good old rubber cement picked up from Hobby Lobby. And it is cut in such a way to fit right back in that area. All right, with the backdrop picture in place, I'm gonna let it sit for a while, let the glue dry, and then I'm gonna come back and kind of touch up the bottom to bring the riverbed right up to the edge, and we'll let that dry, and then hopefully the next step will be getting things prepared to pour the water. The riverbed has been brought up to the edge of the picture along with some scenery on both sides. And then of course, to take away from some of the sharpness here on both sides, once the water gets poured in time, I'm going to have some trees. So that will hopefully break some of that kind of abrupt blue to tree line. And then as you look down the river, or down the creek bed, there'll be more of a subtleness to it. So let's get ready to unbox the Deep Pour Murky Water. So there are several videos already out there about the kits, what's in it. So I'm not going to get too specific, but some of the basic items that come in the kit are you have your mixing cups along with the stickers to mark on the side. And then you have your activator and then the deep pour water. And so with the book that comes with it, it has all sorts of instructions about kind of the area, how much you'll use and that. So I'm going to have to do some figuring out, which that's no problem. In the kit, it also has some plastic gloves and some bottles, or excuse me, not bottles, but the bag, because to use the deep pour water and the activator, they suggest putting it in the bag and then letting it soak in some warm water. Not hot, you don't want it boiling hot by any means, but just some warm water before you get ready to pour it in the cups. Also, you have some tongue depressors for mixing in that as well. So let me do some figuring for the area, and we'll figure out how much of this that I need for the small creek area. In the Woodland Scenics book, it gives you a pretty handy dandy chart on if you're adding your own tinting. Well, that won't be a problem for me since I'm already using the water that is Murky. But it also gives you their website for getting to their water volume estimator. So I did a couple things. I did old school, did a drawing basically with my length of my area from the fascia all the way to the backdrop, and the length is about 20 inches. The width, well, I did an average because I have some areas that are 2.5, some areas that are 3, some that are 4, back to 2.5, and I ended up with about 3. So that's what I'm gonna stick with. My depth, you know, it's a creek. I don't want it real deep like a river would be. So, you know, if it turns out to be a 1/4 of an inch, I'd be happy with that. And so I did my calculating there, but then I also looked on their website and used their kind of water volume estimator there put in my information, told me what I needed. And the neat thing about it was it basically said, hey, you need one kit, essentially what I have of the murky water. Well, this comes in extremely handy when I get ready to do my other area that I'm going to pour, because I'm going to guess I'm going to probably need at least 2, if not 2.5 of these, because there's only 12 fluid ounces between these, 8 ounce here and 4 ounces of the activator in that. So you only end up with about 354 milliliters of liquid. So that'll do my creek area pretty well with just a little left over. And to be quite honest, instead of having the little left over, I think I'm going to go ahead and mix the two. And so what that might do is I might have some areas that it might be a little deeper than a quarter, but I also worry as it fans out to the edges, that's going to reduce the depth. So I think I'm going to go with that. Before I get ready to pour the water, I put my plastic tablecloth down to kind of protect the lower deck and have it closed-pinned in there. But also Woodland Scenic suggests making sure you have some coverings while the water cures. You don't want it to touch it, but just kind of over the top of it so that you don't have any dust or anything that fills. So they used aluminum foil, so I happen to have some aluminum foil. The only thing I need to remember is do not turn on the layout with the aluminum foil, since it's laying across the track in some areas. I would imagine that would not be a good thing for your DCC system. So one thing that they recommend is using their plastic bag that they have and putting both the murky water and the activator in the bag and then soaking it in warm water for up to about 10 minutes. So I have basically my bowl that I use for plaster cloth and all that I'm going to use. So put both of them in there. Key thing they said is make sure you don't jostle them around a lot. Keep them nice and level. Try to get out as much of the air as possible. And then I'll get some warm water and we'll let them set for about 10 to 15 minutes. Here's our water, and we'll get ready to put both the water that is murky and the activator in for 10 minutes. And remember, the most important thing is not to stir it around, not to try to create air bubbles. When it's done, you need to kind of do a little bit of a shake with the bottles, not a vigorous shake like that, but just a little bit of a shake, and then it'll get time to pour it in. This will get poured. It has sat in the warm water here for about 10 minutes now, and it is about time to take it out. So they highly recommend wearing gloves. So I like these that I just get at my local drugstore in the pharmacy area. I use them a lot for custom painting and that. One thing I like about them is you have more of an actual grip than what I call the old cafeteria gloves like the lunch ladies wear at my school. All right. So let's pull the water out of the way. Put this in place. And the one thing they said is just kind of turn it a little bit, probably to make sure all that warmth, because the bottle is a little warm from the water, is ready to go. So there's the murky, and here's the activator. We'll do the same thing. Ooh, this one I can definitely tell is a lot warmer. It doesn't have near the viscous though. It's a little more on the runny side, and that's probably going to be very important when it comes time to pouring these two. This one has more viscous, more of a slow pouring, and that one is the one that as soon as you crack the lid, it could be all over the place. So I went ahead and just kind of estimated I need 354 milliliters, and so my cup jumps from about 330 to 360, so I just kind of estimated that that's what I'm going to need. So this, I'm going to use the whole bottle, and I'll probably use all but about, what did I figure? All but maybe just a few ounces of that one, if that. So let's go ahead and start pouring it. Kind of put this protective tray so if any spills get on it, this is okay. In the video from Woodland Scenics, it says it naturally domes. So if you're pouring an amount that is less than what I need, you might want to pour it, let it set for a little bit before you take an actual measurement, so it kind of self-levels. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but this is all non-hazardous. So that's one thing I liked about it, as opposed to like the Envirotex or anything like that, that there's no harmful fumes or anything like that. So we'll see if we get the last few drops out of there. So it looks like I'm sitting at about 260 milliliters there, and I need to go up to the 354, so the activator will bring me the rest of the way. Yep, I think that one is pretty much done. All right, so the activator, that is a little runnier, so I want to be very careful pouring that. Just a touch more to get to my 354 milliliters. All right, I'm gonna make sure that looks pretty good. Just a little more. There. All right, so as you can see, the murky at the bottom would be a little thicker, a little more viscous. The activator, that's a little runnier, sitting on top. And the big thing is, as you're mixing them, scrape those sides, scrape that bottom. You're gonna stir for about 5 minutes. And then after 5 minutes, you're gonna let it just rest for 5 minutes. Then you come back and you do another about 5 minute stir, and then you're ready to pour. So I'm gonna let this set for the 5 minutes now. And they say, you know, kind of, you might want to cover it up. So I'm just gonna take one of these gloves and just kind of put over top. That way nothing lands in it or that before you get ready to pour it. And you just let it set for 5 minutes. So that's what we'll do. So 5 minutes have passed. And so now we do another 5-minute kind of stir again, scraping the sides, scraping the bottom and that. All right, we'll let it set for 5 minutes and then we'll get ready to pour. When I've seen other videos for pouring water, they're using usually the tongue depressor to kind of move the water and stuff around and push it into fine areas. And I kind of thought some of the mixture of tools I've picked up at our local hardware store that's used for all sorts of grout work and clay and stuff like that would work really well. Since this is all water-based, I have no problem, since it's only used for model railroading purposes, then I could wash them off with just some hot soapy water, but thinking some of the pointed pieces or the rounded pieces might help give me in the crevices that I would like for the water to go into. It is time to pour. So this bridge is not as easy to remove, so I'm going to pour some on one side, some on the other, taking out to the fascia, and I'll use the tongue depressor to kind of have the two meet and that. So let's see what we got. I'm going to start down the center of the kind of the creek bed, and then we'll just let it flow out. All right, I'm going to let that set just a little bit and work with some of it. Once again, careful not to start creating additional air bubbles. That would not be the intent. Instead of dragging, I kind of just say, you know, kind of tap it and bring it along to where you want it. And I'd have to say right now, I'm pretty happy with how it flowed. So I'm just going to pour the rest of it for the sheer depth that I want. All right, so there we have it. Now it's just a matter of just waiting, which I think sometimes that can be the difficult thing sometimes for modelers. But sometimes your best results are just to sit back and wait. Don't do anything, don't mess with anything. Just let it be. And I think that is definitely the case with the water. The other nice thing is, as I look at my drop cloth, I see no leaks. That's a good thing, because we don't want that. So these things are essentially disposable. I mean, it can be rinsed out and reused because it is water soluble in that. So that I might use. Obviously, this is garbage. And some of those tools I did not use, so we can just leave them as is. A couple detail things that I want to finish up is obviously my fly fishermen need to have their lines in the water, and as soon as they hit the water they do seem to be sinking in. And this one also has a canoe. I wouldn't mind putting the canoe partially in the water. Oops. Well, I'm going to wait the 4 hours before trying that, is what they recommend, because obviously unlike a real canoe, it wants to sink. So I can clean that off with some soapy water, and then I can put the canoe in there. So the last thing to do is also cover it up to protect it from dust or anything like that. So I've made these large sheets of aluminum foil just for that purpose. You don't want them touching the water. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video on the Murky Deep Pour. Join me next month when we kind of uncover what we have and take a look at how it looks and kind of bring the scenery together. But also we'll get ready to move into the next area on the layout that has a water feature as well. So take care, happy railroading everybody, and we'll talk with you real soon. Bye-bye.